You are listening to inspiring stories carefully selected by AI Happy, told by the voice of Grandpa Kevin. Today's story follows Ivy, a kind-hearted American girl who once believed that being controlled meant being cared for, and that being quiet meant feeling peaceful. In a world full of filtered smiles and silent competition, she learns what it truly means to walk away from a toxic friendship and finally step into the life she was meant to live. Ivy and Hannah first met during the fall of their freshman year at the University of Texas in Austin, one of the biggest and most well-known colleges in the state. Ivy was a petite girl with a quiet, thoughtful personality. She usually tied her long brown hair into a neat ponytail. She grew up in a warm, loving family where everything felt gentle, where people spoke kindly, respected one another, and always believed the best in others. Because of that, Ivy had an open heart, a soft spirit, and maybe a little bit of innocence. She trusted easily and hadn't yet seen much of the darker sides of life. She loved listening to Taylor Swift, especially on long walks or while journaling at coffee shops. To Ivy, Taylor's lyrics weren't just music. They were tiny life lessons wrapped in melody. She had a whole playlist called Healing Days, filled with songs like Invisible String, You're on Your Own, Kid, and Daylight. On tough mornings, she would plug in her earbuds, sip her hot Starbucks coffee, and let the music gently carry her forward. Meanwhile, Hannah came from a business family in Dallas. She had been raised to be confident, socially smart, and always ready to make a good impression. Hannah knew how to light up a room, charming, witty, and always put together. People liked her right away. She loved brand-name clothes, overnight parties, and had a talent for making even strangers feel at ease. They met on a sunny Monday morning in early September during their Introduction to Digital Media class in a small lecture hall on North Campus. Ivy had just moved into West Hall 3 days earlier and was still figuring out how to use the Campus Map app on her phone. She walked into class a few minutes late, holding an iced vanilla latte from Starbucks, scanning the seats nervously, until she spotted an empty spot next to a blonde girl wearing an oversized Aritzia hoodie, typing quickly on a MacBook covered in stickers with one AirPod in. That girl was Hannah. She had gotten there early, not because she had to, but because she was used to busy schedules from high school. Hannah already had a friend group from orientation week, followed them on Instagram, tagged them in memes from overheard campus, and they were already trying out new TikTok trends together. But when she saw Ivy looking a little lost and unsure, she paused her music, pulled out one AirPod, smiled, and waved lightly. "Hey, you can sit here if you want." Just one casual sentence. But it sparked a friendship that at first felt so natural. While they waited for the professor to start the slides, they began chatting about things like the campus Wi-Fi password, which app worked best for tracking class schedules, and how stressful it was to submit papers through Turnitin. They also bonded over little things, like Ivy's love for journaling, her morning coffee runs, and how she said, "I treat Taylor Swift like my personal therapist." Hannah laughed out loud at that. From there, everything just clicked. By the end of that first class, they had followed each other on Instagram, shared a few study memes over DM, and added each other on Snap. Just to send random stuff, every Friday, Ivy and Hannah went to Target, the favorite store of most college students. they would look at scented candles, cute notebooks, and sometimes buy oversized hoodies just for fun. Ivy still remembered walking slowly through the bright, colorful aisles, picking out little things to decorate their dorm room. After shopping, they'd sit down in the food court, sharing one hot dog and 2 big cups of Coke with ice. While eating, they talked about everything: silly stuff from campus, their dreams for the future, and how they wanted to move to New York, Seattle, or maybe even Paris one day to work in media. With Hannah around, those dreams felt closer, like they could really happen. But even in those warm, happy moments, on their candle runs to Target or lazy weekends chatting over iced caramel macchiatos at Starbucks, little cracks started to show. Small things, easy to ignore. Ivy didn't know exactly when it began, but later, when she looked back, she realized those cracks were always there. She just trusted Hannah so much she couldn't see anything but a good friendship. Ivy grew up in a loving family full of hope and encouragement. Compliments were always sincere, and everyone believed that if you were kind and worked hard, you could succeed. She never learned to doubt people, especially not someone like Hannah. Hannah was smart, quick-witted, a top student, and always seemed to know more about life, people, and the unwritten rules of college. She spoke with confidence, had a charming smile, and knew how to make others feel special just by paying attention to them. Ivy felt lucky to be considered her best friend. It almost felt like a quiet kind of validation, proof that she wasn't so ordinary after all. So, when Ivy excitedly shared that she had just gotten an A on her final digital media exam, the one she had been so nervous about, and Hannah simply smiled and said, "Wow, that's awesome. Congrats. You're so lucky. Not everyone gets on that professor's good side, you know." Ivy gave a small, awkward smile. She didn't think Hannah meant anything bad. Maybe she was just teasing. Another time, after Ivy was chosen to be the team leader for a class project, she told Hannah with bright, happy eyes. Hannah smiled and said, "Oh, wow, look at you. That's amazing. You're really stepping up." Then she added, almost casually, "I've actually been team leader like 3 times already. Honestly, it gets kind of boring after a while." At first, it sounded supportive, but as Ivy sat there, her smile faded just a little. Was it really that big of a deal? Maybe she was just late to the game. Maybe Hannah had already done everything Ivy was only now starting to be proud of. Ivy told herself there was still a lot she could learn from Hannah. After that, Ivy started holding back. She shared less about her small wins. She stopped showing pride in her own progress. And slowly, she even started doubting whether the good things she did were really good enough. One time, Ivy wrote a blog post for class, and her professor actually shared it on the class forum. That didn't happen often, so it felt like a big deal. She thought about telling Hannah. Her fingers even hovered over the message box. But then she stopped because she remembered how Hannah usually reacted. A little smirk, a light laugh, and something like, "Yeah, he loves that style. It's cute, but I wouldn't take it too seriously." And Ivy believed her. She told herself maybe her blog post wasn't that special. Maybe she just got lucky. There were probably so many students out there who were more talented, more creative, more deserving. And if Hannah, someone who always seemed smarter, more experienced, more in the know, said it wasn't a big deal, then maybe it really wasn't. What Ivy didn't see was how her confidence was slowly fading, not because someone insulted her, not because someone was mean, but because of little comments like this, soft, subtle, like a thin fog settling over the face of a friend you thought you could trust. To Ivy, Hannah's words always felt like big sister advice, honest, a little sarcastic, but clearly meant to help. And because Ivy deeply valued being understood, not by everyone, but by the people she trusted, she remembered everything Hannah said. One late afternoon in March, after class, the two of them were sitting at their usual spot in the little cafe across from campus. They had been coming there since the start of the semester, dozens of times. The sunlight spilled through the windows, casting warm, honey-colored streaks across their table. That day, Ivy had just received an exciting email from her professor. She'd been nominated for a prestigious internship at a major media company in New York, the kind of opportunity only a few students got each year. Her eyes lit up as she told Hannah, a quiet pride in her voice, something rare for Ivy, who wasn't used to celebrating herself. Hannah paused for a second, stirring her iced matcha latte, then looked up with a smile, the kind of polite smile that seemed caring, but carried something Ivy couldn't quite name. That company? Hannah tilted her head like she was trying to remember. Kinda toxic, honestly. My friend worked there and quit after a week. Total drama. Super fast-paced, impossible deadlines, and people talk behind your back all the time, like working in a reality show. Ivy froze for a second. Her hands, wrapped around her cappuccino, suddenly felt colder. Really? She asked, trying to sound casual. Hannah nodded, her tone softening, now with a hint of what looked like genuine concern. The same concern that had always made Ivy feel safe. Yeah, I don't want to discourage you or anything. Just, are you sure that kind of place is right for you? I mean, it's New York. Everything's intense and competitive. You're someone who needs time to warm up, to feel safe before you open up. There, they expect you to be on fire from day one. It's all team projects and cliques. No one's gonna wait for you to ease in. She set her drink down and leaned back in her chair. Her voice was calm, but her eyes had already drifted back to her phone like the conversation was over. But Ivy couldn't stop thinking about what she'd just heard. Ivy looked down at the foam slowly fading on her cappuccino. She didn't say much, just gave a small nod and forced a smile. Yeah, maybe I was being a little too dreamy. Something inside her quietly cracked, not because Hannah was wrong, but because she seemed too right. Right in a way that made Ivy start doubting herself. She thought about group projects in class where she always took a while to speak up. She thought about how she needed extra time to finish a piece of writing, and how that might not fit in a media company that ran on tight deadlines and fast decisions. Ivy always believed Hannah understood her. So when someone who gets you says, "I don't think this place is for you," how could you not listen, especially when you already have your own doubts? That night, Ivy opened her laptop and typed a few more lines in her internship application, then paused. She reread the job description, stared at the word New York in the email subject line, and let out a quiet sigh. She closed her laptop. The next day, she messaged her professor and said she had decided not to apply. "I don't think I'm quite ready," she wrote. The professor replied, "All right, Ivy, it's a shame. But if you're sure about your decision, then do what feels right to you." What Ivy didn't realize was that the thing she believed was right wasn't exactly the voice of her own heart. It was the echo of someone she trusted too blindly. A few months later, another classmate got the internship. She posted Instagram stories from her new life, coffee at her desk, group brainstorming sessions, the city skyline from the 20th floor of a shiny New York building. Ivy watched the stories in silence. She wasn't jealous, not exactly. She didn't feel regret either, just something strange, like she had quietly stepped away from something that was meant for her. And when Hannah saw those stories, she simply said, "Wait, she actually got the job? Wow. Still, I never liked the vibe of that company anyway." Ivy didn't say anything. For the first time, she didn't fully believe Hannah, but she wasn't ready to question her either. At that point, Ivy still thought Hannah knew her best. And sometimes, that kind of trust, the deep kind, can be the very thing that blocks you from hearing your own voice. Hannah's words had always come like tiny drops of rain, not loud, not harsh, but steady. Soft enough to seem harmless, but constant enough to wear away something solid inside Ivy, little by little. At first, everything still looked pretty good. Ivy had started dating Liam, a quiet, thoughtful software engineer from San Francisco, who had just moved to Austin to work at a fast-growing startup. He wasn't just smart and successful. He made Ivy feel like she was the most important person in the room, no matter where they were. He would text her things like, "Did you eat today?" During lunch, remembered little details like how she liked peach tea with no ice, and always walked on the outside edge of the sidewalk to keep her safe. When Ivy told Hannah she was dating someone, Hannah gave her a warm hug and said her usual line, "I'm really happy for you. Liam sounds amazing." And Ivy believed her. But over time, Hannah's comments started to shift. Not in a dramatic way, just slightly enough to make Ivy pause and think. One evening after class, they were sitting at the Taco Bell near campus. Hannah took a bite of her quesadilla and said casually, "Liam's great, but have you noticed how you kind of shrink a little when you talk about yourself around him, like you're turning your volume down?" Ivy frowned, but this time she didn't stay silent. "No, I don't feel that way at all," she said, trying to keep her tone calm but firm. "I actually feel really comfortable around him. I don't think I'm shrinking myself." Hannah raised her eyebrows slightly, then smiled. "Oh, that's great then. I'm happy to hear that, Ivy." She paused for a beat, then added, "I just worry about you, you know. When your boyfriend is as accomplished as Liam, well, you know how it is. The world is full of girls who are prettier, smarter, more outgoing. Do you really think you can keep someone like that forever?" Ivy didn't reply. The conversation shifted to something else soon after, and they eventually said goodbye and went their separate ways. On the surface, it seemed like a normal conversation. But later that night, Ivy kept hearing Hannah's words in her head. They didn't just disappear. They clung to her thoughts, whispering doubt she hadn't felt before. Why was she suddenly comparing herself to other girls out there? Why, even while being in Liam's love, but she feels so unsure of herself? Meanwhile, little by little, Ivy started noticing how different she felt around Hannah. Hanging out didn't feel the same anymore. The laughs felt a little more forced, the conversations a little more careful. Something had changed. Not dramatically, but enough to make Ivy feel it in her chest. She started feeling uneasy before meeting up, like she had to prepare herself emotionally. And yet, every time Hannah texted to grab coffee or hang out, Ivy still said yes. not because she wanted to, but because she didn't know how to say no. She had never said no to Hannah before. The idea of refusing felt strange, like breaking an unspoken rule in their friendship. So she kept showing up, even when her smiles were tight, even when the silence between them felt heavier than it used to. Everything started to unravel one Sunday afternoon. Ivy was folding her laundry in her dorm room when Liam called. His voice was calm, but something about it felt off. "Ivy, I need to talk to you about Hannah." She froze, hearing that name as coming from Liam, someone who always respected her space and avoided unnecessary drama, made her heart sink. Liam paused for a moment, then sent her a screenshot by email. It was a conversation between Hannah and one of Liam's co-workers, someone Ivy had never met. Hannah's words were colder than anything Ivy had ever heard from her. "She's just using Liam to boost herself." Smart move, honestly. "I used to think she was genuine, but now I see she hides behind that sweet and fragile girl act, so people feel sorry for her. She doesn't have what it takes. No one in media takes girls like her seriously. At least she knows how to pick a boyfriend with potential." Ivy sat still, staring at the screen. The black and white words felt like a weight pressing on her chest. Not because they were true, but because they came from someone she once trusted more than herself. Liam was still on the line, gentle as always. "I don't want to make things weird between you and Hannah," he said gently, "but I figured you should know." Ivy didn't cry. She thought she would. Maybe scream, feel betrayed, or totally fall apart. But instead, a different feeling slowly settled over her. Clarity. She sat there quietly, her mind replaying all the years behind them. Late night chicken nugget runs at McDonald's, sitting under the trees just talking about life, the hugs, the "I care about you" convos. And then those weird moments when Hannah made her doubt herself, but always wrapped it in a soft little, "I'm just looking out for you. I want what's best. I'm scared you won't end up happy." Back then, Ivy thought that was just how friendship worked. But now, she could see it clearly. It wasn't care, it was control, dressed up as concern. That night, after the call with Liam, Ivy didn't cry. She just sat in her warm dorm room, the light shining on a photo of her and Hannah, laughing at the fall fair after winning a silly stuffed animal. Now, that photo felt like it belonged to two strangers. Ivy picked up her phone. No texts, no explanations. She didn't ask why. She didn't wait for an apology. She didn't need closure. She just hit unfollow, then block. Each tap felt quiet, final, like clearing out a messy room in her mind that had been cluttered for way too long. No anger, no drama, just peace. Ivy suddenly realized she'd been stuck in a friendship where love always came with doubt, friendly advice disguised as care, and sneaky comparisons that made her lose her own voice. For years, Ivy had been shrinking herself, playing small and quiet just to fit into the good enough box Hannah set for her. But now, nope, that was done. Ivy felt like she'd just kicked off a pair of tight shoes she'd been forcing on for way too long. Yeah, it stung, but mostly, it felt like a huge weight lifted off her chest. She didn't hate Hannah. Hate? Nah, no space for that. It was just, there was no room left for Hannah in her life anymore. And Liam? Looking back, Ivy saw one thing crystal clear. He loved her for exactly who she was. No flashy stuff, no fake perfect act, no pretending to be someone else just to deserve him. Even better, Ivy felt mad grateful, not for Hannah, but for herself, for finally seeing what was really going on before it got any worse. She thought, if this hadn't happened, if Liam hadn't stumbled on those messages, she might still be doubting herself every single day, holding herself back out of fear of getting judged. And worst case, she could have lost Liam, this sweet, kind guy who always saw her worth, even when she couldn't. That thought gave her chills. If she kept letting that toxic friendship hang around, it would have slowly crept in and wrecked the best parts of her life. But thank God, like seriously lucky, because she woke up, because she walked away, because she chose herself and said no more, and because she stopped the quiet damage that could have shattered her relationship with Liam, a guy who didn't deserve to get caught up in Hannah's low-key jealousy game. Now, Ivy knew for sure, leaving Hannah wasn't just good for her. It was how she protected the love and life she was building with everything she's got. For the first time in forever, Ivy didn't stress over editing her Instagram caption 3 times just to see if people thought she was good enough. She dropped a pic with a real smile, no filters, no fake vibes, and just wrote, a little messy, a lot real, no hate. No, is this pic kinda harsh? Comments, just a bunch of sweet messages and a text from Liam. Love your smile, babe. Ivy started doing her thing again, launching a chill podcast about the Gen Z hustle, sketching out marketing ideas she'd ditched because Hannah once said, "Who even cares? Everyone's doing it." Then out of nowhere, a cool media startup in NYC hit her up for an interview, and this time she was like, heck yeah. Liam was right there. No drama, no judging, just hyping her up and reminding her to believe in herself. Slowly, Ivy busted out of that shell she'd been stuck in, the one where she always held back to fit some easygoing vibe someone else wanted. She got way more confident in meetings, started mentoring freshmen wanting in on the industry, and her LinkedIn post about toxic friendships that shrink you went viral. Over 10K shares. One time, on a work trip in Seattle, she spotted Hannah at a conference, still glowing, still magnetic. But Ivy, she just smiled, gave a casual nod from across the room, and kept it moving. 2 years later, on a gorgeous fall day in Napa Valley, Ivy walked down the aisle rocking a simple, elegant white lace dress. Liam was waiting, eyes warm and steady like day one. They promised each other not to change, but to keep it real and walk side by side. In her short speech, Ivy looked around at her crew and said, "Some people made me doubt myself, but others showed me I don't have to be perfect, just real, honest, and brave enough. And I'm so grateful I found that again." The wedding ended with laughs and cozy vibes. Ivy grabbed Liam's hand as they stepped onto the balcony where the sunset was painting the vineyard gold. She took a deep breath and felt it, her heart and her life finally in the right place.